What would you do if your only friend risked everything for you? That was the day I learned loyalty comes at a cost, and not the one you'd expect. The forest always smelled different in September, that sharp, honest scent of pine and distant rain. Jack, my retriever, had his own ideas about forest etiquette, crash through every bush, chase every squirrel, and return covered in mud, looking prouder than a parade winner. My son, Ben, said we needed the exercise. My wife, Martha, said we needed the togetherness. If I'm honest, I just needed a break from my inbox and the relentless grind of being everyone's fixer. On the morning it all began, I did something uncharacteristic. I left my phone at home. I told myself it was a moral reset, but the truth? I was tired of being on call for everyone but my own family. Instead, I grabbed a thermos of burnt coffee, cinched my jacket tight, and let us out, Jack bounding ahead like he owned the world. It started well, too well. Ben, for once, wasn't glued to his Nintendo, and Martha didn't mention her mother. For a fleeting hour, we looked like those obnoxious families in hiking commercials. I should have known it wouldn't last. The first injustice hit before noon, as it always does when you're foolish enough to hope for peace. We stumbled onto a campsite. Not ours, a stranger's. Beer cans, cigarette butts, a ripped tent. A mess. Jack sniffed around, tail stiff, hackles up. Ben, always the diplomat, picked up a can and said, "People suck, Dad." Before I could respond, a shot echoed through the valley. Not close, but close enough. Martha's face went pale. "Is it hunting season?" she whispered. Ben's eyes got big. Jack growled, low and menacing, every muscle tense. For a heartbeat, time held its breath. It's funny how injustice feels, not like fear, not quite. More like a cold splash that wakes you up, even when you want to stay dreaming. My family looked at me for answers, and I did what fathers do best, pretended to have one. "Let's keep moving," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "And stay close." The forest seemed darker after that. Shadows grew teeth, and every snapped twig felt personal. Jack didn't leave my side, which, in retrospect, was the first sign. But at the time, I chalked it up to nerves. The rest of the hike was uneventful, at least on the surface. But the damage was done. That sense of safety, of Sunday morning invincibility, was gone. We made camp by the creek. Ben collected firewood, Martha tried to act unbothered, and Jack watched the trees, ears twitching. That night, I lay awake listening to the wind. Jack curled against my legs, a living, breathing shield. I thought I heard something out in the dark, but maybe it was just my own guilty conscience. Because I'd kept a secret from them, one that started with another lie, another "for your own good." But none of us could imagine what was waiting in the woods. What happened next changed everything. You won't want to miss how it unfolds. Have you ever seen a wild animal look you in the eye, and realize you might not walk away? That morning, I learned what real fear is. But what came after was worse. The world looks different at dawn. Everything's sharper, hungrier. I rolled out of my sleeping bag, spine aching, knees protesting. Martha was already boiling water, hair tied back in the battle braid she used for emergencies. Ben slept on, oblivious. Jack hadn't moved all night, or maybe he hadn't slept at all. We ate in silence. Even the birds sounded nervous. I tried to make small talk, failed. The tension was a third person at our table, sullen and stubborn. Ben insisted on fishing at the creek, and I let him, anything to give Martha and me 5 minutes of normal. Jack tagged along, ever the faithful. It happened fast. That's the thing about disaster, it doesn't schedule an appointment. One moment, I was untangling fishing line, the next, I heard Jack's bark, a sound I'd never heard before, not playful, not warning. It was pure, animal terror. Then I saw it. A grizzly, massive and wet-furred, standing where the creek curved, nostrils flaring. Its eyes found me, and for a second, I felt like a teenager again, powerless, voiceless, waiting for something bigger to decide my fate. I wanted to scream, to run. I did neither. Ben froze, fishing rod dangling from his hand like a broken promise. Jack snarled, putting himself between us and the bear. It charged. Everything went sideways. Ben stumbled, I yanked him back. Jack lunged, barking and snapping, fur bristling. The bear swiped, a sound like wet leather tearing. Martha screamed. Jack darted left, drawing the bear after him, away from us. The next 60 seconds lasted an eternity. I heard Jack yelp, saw fur flying, felt a numbness creep up my spine. And then, just as suddenly, the bear turned and lumbered off, leaving a mess of broken branches, blood, and fur. Jack limped back, side torn, eyes wild. He collapsed at my feet, tongue lolling, tail wagging weakly. I pressed my sweatshirt against his wound, hands shaking. Ben sobbed. Martha knelt beside us, face white. He saved us, Ben whispered. He saved us all. But all I could think was, what if that wasn't the only thing he saved us from? Because the guilt gnawed at me, louder than the chaos. I knew something my family didn't. And after today, I'd have to tell them, or lose everything. This is just the beginning. The real secret is about to surface. Stay for the truth that could destroy us. What would you do if the one thing holding your family together was a lie? The truth clawed its way to the surface that night, and nothing could put it back. Jack survived the first hour. Barely. I don't remember carrying him, I just remember the weight, the smell of blood and pine, Ben's shaking hands, Martha's frantic whispering. My brain went cold, the old survival autopilot. I wrapped Jack's wound with my shirt and prayed to whatever gods look after fools and family dogs. We'd planned 2 more days in the woods. Now the plan was just, get out. I stuffed our gear while Martha dialed every emergency number her phone could reach. Of course, there's no signal when you actually need it. We made a stretcher out of branches. Ben cried the whole time, cheeks streaked with snot and terror. Jack licked his hand, even as he bled all over my jeans. The forest wasn't just woods now, it was a gauntlet. Every sound felt loaded. Every step, a dare. I marched us back the way we came, adrenaline pumping lies about how Jack's tough, he'll make it. I knew I was lying. I just hoped no one would call me out. Somewhere between mile 3 and 4, Martha broke the silence. Why was Jack so on edge all weekend? Her voice was too calm. I recognized the warning, years of marriage will teach you the difference between questions and accusations. I dodged. Maybe he smelled the grizzly from the start. She gave me a look sharp enough to cut bark. Don't. Not now. Ben glared at me, his own suspicion growing. Even in crisis, family has a way of sniffing out weak spots. I kept walking, one foot in front of the other, hating myself for every step. Because I remembered, 2 years ago, a different forest, a different secret. Jack hadn't always been ours. He belonged to my brother before my brother vanished. A hiking accident, the coroner said. A family tragedy, the papers wrote. But I'd never told Martha the full truth. Not about the debts, not about the screaming matches, not about the last fight where Jack had been the only witness. When my brother disappeared, Jack came to us with a new limp and eyes that seemed to say, you know more than you're telling anyone. That knowledge burned under my skin even now. And after today, with my family staring at me across a bloodied dog and a trail of half-spoken lies, I knew my past was about to rip everything apart. We reached the road by dusk. A stranger in a pickup stopped, took one look at Jack and Ben, and loaded us in without a word. On the drive to the nearest vet, the silence was so thick you could almost taste the accusation. At the clinic, I signed the forms with shaking hands. Ben hovered by Jack's side, refusing to go home. Martha stared at me, her question burning a hole through every excuse. "What aren't you telling us, Mark?" I wanted to say, nothing. I wanted to say, everything. All I managed was, not here. Not now. But I knew the reckoning was coming. And the truth was, I deserved it. We all have scars. Some are visible. Some are secrets. The next chapter, nobody gets out unscathed. Would you forgive the person who shattered your family, if it meant saving the one you loved most? Sometimes, the price of truth is higher than betrayal. Night at the vet's office is its own brand of hell. The walls hum with fluorescent lights and unspoken fears. Martha paced the hallway, arms crossed so tight she might snap. Ben curled next to Jack's gurney, clutching the stuffed bear he'd had since he was 5. The irony wasn't lost on me. The vet patched Jack up with more skill than hope. "He's lucky," she said, "but the next 24 hours are critical." Lucky? If you call being mauled for my mistakes luck, then sure. Martha found me outside, leaning against the vending machine, eyes raw. Talk. One word, but loaded, the old marriage contract, still valid even when everything else crumbled. I started slow, but once you open the floodgates, there's no stopping. About my brother. About the fights, the money, the last hike that ended with a scream and Jack running back alone. About how I'd let my family believe the sanitized version, lost hiker, tragic accident, and how Jack, by some miracle, had found us later. About the guilt that chewed through every family dinner since. Martha listened, stone-faced. She was always better at silence than I was. When I finished, she didn't cry. She just shook her head. "You never gave us the chance to grieve. You stole that from Ben. From me." Her anger was the cold, hard kind, the kind that doesn't explode, just freezes everything it touches. Inside, Ben watched through the glass. He saw his parents talking but couldn't hear the words. He just held Jack's paw, whispering the promises kids make when they think no one's listening. "I'll never leave you. I'll never let Dad be alone. I'll always protect you." Back in the waiting room, Martha finally sat. "You brought us here because you wanted to protect us. But you lied." She looked at me, tired, spent. "You don't have to fix everything. Just tell the truth. That's all we ever needed." I nodded. It was the only thing left. Jack survived the night, because of course he did, loyal to the end, no matter how much we let him down. But when morning came, I knew I'd have to face Ben, and let him see the cracks in the hero he thought he had for a father. Because sometimes, the only way out is through. Tomorrow, nothing will be the same. The family's greatest test is still to come, and forgiveness may not be enough. What happens when you finally face the truth, and life throws you one more test? Sometimes, survival isn't just about what you confess, but who you fight for when the past refuses to stay buried. Jack's wounds began to heal, but the wounds between us only deepened. The morning after I confessed, Ben barely spoke to me. He left for school with a hug for Jack and nothing for me. Martha kept her distance, moving around the house with the precision of someone trying not to break what little remained. I tried to fill the days with routine, work, chores, pointless emails, paying bills. Every sound in the house seemed sharper, the click of Martha's mug on the counter, Ben's door closing too softly, Jack's slow, limping steps down the hall. Guilt gnawed at me like a toothache I couldn't ignore. But families aren't held together by comfort. They're held together by what you do when everything is uncomfortable. 3 days after Jack came home, the phone rang just after dawn. A sheriff's deputy on the other end. "Mr. Sullivan, we found something up near Oxbow Trail. It's about your brother. We need you to come in." The room spun. I heard Martha's gasp from the kitchen. Ben looked up, eyes wide. Jack, sensing the tension, hobbled over and pressed his nose against my hand. I thought I was done with secrets. I thought I'd buried the past for good. But the past, it turns out, keeps its own schedule. We drove to the ranger station in brittle silence. The deputy met us at the door, hat in his hands. He explained, some hikers found remains, clothing, a wallet, what was left of a backpack. DNA confirmed it was my brother. My world shrank to a pinpoint. I braced for anger, for blame. But all Martha did was grip my hand. Ben stood frozen, silent, his face pale as milk. Jack, even slower now, pressed himself to my leg, I searching mine for permission to trust. The questions came, would we claim the body? Did we want to see the site? Did we need a chaplain? I nodded at all the right places but barely heard them. My mind spun with memories, old arguments, laughter around a campfire, Jack as a puppy curled up between us. Afterwards, back home, we sat at the kitchen table, the same table where secrets were first told. Martha reached across and took my hand. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore," she said, voice thick with exhaustion and something like forgiveness. "I'm tired of hiding from our life," I whispered. "Tired of pretending loss is weakness." Ben, brave in his own way, finally broke his silence. "Were you and Uncle John fighting the last time?" "Yes," I said, my voice breaking. "But he loved you, Ben. I need you to remember that. He was lost, not just in the woods, but inside. I should have told you. I should have told everyone." Ben nodded slowly, eyes shining with tears he wouldn't let fall. "Can we go say goodbye?" It wasn't the ending I wanted. But maybe it was the one we needed. A week later, the three of us, 4, counting Jack, hiked up Oxbow Trail. The forest looked different, less threatening. At the site, we left wildflowers and a photo of us, the last family picture before everything broke. Ben said a few quiet words. Martha cried openly. I finally let myself grieve, for my brother, for all the lost years, and for the fear that had kept me silent. As we turned to leave, Jack nudged Ben forward, his tail wagging for the first time since the attack. On the drive home, something shifted between us, not a full repair, but the first threads of a new trust. Jack would always have his scars, and so would we. But scars mean you survived. Scars are proof that something tried to destroy you, and failed. That night, I sat on the porch, Jack at my feet, Ben and Martha laughing inside over something simple and small. The wind was full of pine and possibility. For the first time in a long time, I believed we might actually be okay. But healing is never a straight path. What came next tested us all over again, and proved that sometimes, facing danger together is the only way to become a family again. Can a family ever be safe when the wild is at their door, and the past refuses to let go? This time, danger comes not just from the forest, but from within their own hearts. The weeks that followed the hike to Oxbow Trail were both healing and unsettling. We settled into uneasy peace, our wounds too fresh for old routines. Every night, I caught myself listening for Ben's laughter, for the scrape of Martha's chair, for the steady sound of Jack's breathing by my bed. Scars, yes, but we were mending. But just when you think you're done with storms, life sends another. It started one night, just as the sun dipped behind the ridge and the forest faded to blue. I was on the porch with Jack, watching the day disappear, letting my mind wander. Jack's ears pricked up, a sound, faint but real. He growled, low and steady. Inside, Martha called from the kitchen, "Mark, did you hear that?" Before I could answer, Ben burst in, eyes wide. "Dad, there's something by the fence." I saw eyes. Big ones. I reached for the old flashlight and headed out, Jack by my side. My heart thudded in my chest. This wasn't just some raccoon or stray dog. Jack's body language was all tension and warning. We reached the edge of our property, where the garden faded into thick woods. In the beam of my flashlight, I saw them, tracks, far too big for any dog. Fresh, pressed deep into the mud. My blood went cold. Another bear, or the same one, drawn back by the scent of old wounds and new fear? Jack barked, loud and defiant. Something rustled in the darkness. Ben, against all orders, had followed us outside. He clung to my sleeve, his voice trembling, "Dad, is it back?" I wanted to lie, to promise safety, but Jack answered for me. He lunged forward, barking harder, a living wall between us and the black, shifting edge of the woods. Suddenly, something crashed through the underbrush. The bear, drawn by our scent, burst into the yard. For a heartbeat, I saw its massive shoulders and dark eyes, so close I could smell its wild, earthy breath. Jack didn't hesitate. Despite his limp, he charged, teeth bared, risking everything again for the family that had broken and rebuilt around him. Martha screamed from the porch. I grabbed Ben and shoved him behind me, heart in my throat. But this time I wasn't a passive witness. Something in me snapped. All the guilt, fear, and regret boiled over. I grabbed the garden rake and shouted, slamming it against a tree, desperate to distract the beast. The bear hesitated, drawn to the noise. Jack circled, fearless despite his wounds. "Get inside." I roared at Ben and Martha. They ran. I stood my ground, heart pounding, legs shaking, refusing to let terror make me useless again. At last, the bear backed away, unwilling to challenge a man and a wild dog together. It vanished into the woods, leaving only crushed grass and claw marks as proof. I dropped the rake, breathless, shaking, but alive. Jack limped back to me, tail wagging, tongue lolling, eyes bright with adrenaline. I knelt and hugged him, tears mixing with sweat and dirt. Inside, Martha wrapped us both in her arms, and Ben squeezed in tight. Our family, so battered, so imperfect, but still holding on. That night, we all slept in the living room, Jack in the center, our wounded guardian, our bridge between danger and forgiveness. I realized something had changed. I wasn't protecting them alone anymore. We protected each other. But peace is fragile, and trust takes work. The true test for our family wasn't over, it was only beginning. Next time, it wouldn't be the wild that threatened us, but the choices we'd have to make as a family. How do you rebuild trust after every secret has come to light? Sometimes, the hardest part isn't surviving the wild, it's facing the truth you brought home with you. After the second bear encounter, word spread quickly through the neighborhood. People came by, some with sympathy, some with suspicion. "Maybe you should move," one neighbor suggested, half serious, half mocking. "Some places just attract trouble." I smiled politely, but inside, I felt the sting. Was this house cursed? Or were we simply paying the price for things left unsaid too long? That week, Martha and I barely spoke. Not out of anger, but from exhaustion, like two boxers in their corners, waiting for the next round. Ben, restless, hovered between us and Jack, his schoolwork slipping, shadows growing under his eyes. The only one who seemed unfazed was Jack, who slept in the hall, every sense tuned to danger, as if he'd accepted that this was his purpose. One rainy night, while Martha was out late at work, Ben crept into the living room, clutching the photograph from our hike to Oxbow Trail. "Dad, are we ever going to be normal again?" he asked. I wanted to give him the classic reassurance, "Of course, son." But I'd made enough false promises. "Normal's overrated," I said at last. "But we can be honest. Even when it's hard." Ben chewed his lip. "Did you ever wish you could start over? Like, move somewhere new, just the three of us? Forget everything?" His question hit me harder than any bear. Was I the one holding us back? Was my fear, my history, what kept my family trapped in this cycle? That night, after Martha came home, we sat down together. No distractions. Just the three of us, Jack dozing at our feet. Martha finally spoke first. "I'm tired of living in survival mode," she said. "I want a real life, Mark. I want Ben to have friends, a safe home, not this fortress." I nodded. "I know. I've been hiding, not just from the wild, but from myself. From you." Ben looked from one of us to the other, hope and fear warring in his eyes. "What if we left?" he asked quietly. "What if we started over?" We sat with the question, letting it fill the room. The idea of leaving, of walking away from everything familiar, everything haunted, was terrifying. But so was staying, and watching our son learn fear as his first language. Finally, Martha took my hand, and for the first time in months, I didn't flinch. "Let's try," she said. "Let's choose each other, not just survival." Ben smiled, Jack thumped his tail, and for a moment, I saw the family we could become. That night, for the first time in years, I dreamed of possibility, not regret. But breaking from the past is never easy. Packing up your life means choosing what, and who, is worth carrying forward. In the next chapter, one last secret will force us to decide what family really means. And once we close that door, there's no going back. Can a family ever truly start over, or do old scars always follow? Sometimes, the bravest thing isn't fighting the wild, but saying goodbye. The decision to leave didn't happen overnight, but once we made it, everything moved fast. For the first time in years, our house felt alive with something other than tension: stacks of boxes, laughter over old photos, arguments about what to keep and what to throw away. Martha dug up her mother's china from the back of a dusty cupboard. Ben found his baby shoes and tried to fit them on Jack's paw. The dog played along, wise and patient, the only one of us who'd truly seen everything. We told the neighbors we were moving. Some nodded with understanding, others looked relieved. It didn't matter. This was about us. On our last night, we sat in the empty living room, the three of us, Jack curled between. I tried to make a speech, but the words caught in my throat. It was Martha who said what needed to be said. We survived more than we ever thought we could. We kept secrets, we broke, and we healed. Now we get to choose what kind of family we are. Ben leaned his head on Jack's back. "Can Jack come, too?" We all laughed, the best medicine after all that sorrow. The next morning, we drove away as the sun was rising, the house shrinking behind us in the rearview mirror. No one spoke for a long time. Sometimes, starting over is just about being brave enough to let go. The new town wasn't perfect. There were bills to pay, fences to fix, new neighbors to greet, but it was ours. We hiked new trails, always together, always with Jack in the lead. Ben made friends. Martha started a garden. I found work that didn't feel like a punishment. The wild was still out there, somewhere, but so was forgiveness. So was the future. One evening, as we sat on the porch, Ben looked up at me and asked, "Dad, do you ever miss the old place?" I thought of the scars, mine, Martha's, Ben's, Jack's. I thought of everything we'd lost, and everything we'd saved. "Sometimes," I said. "But I wouldn't trade what we have now for anything." Jack, old and gray around the muzzle, nudged my hand. Family, in the end, is just who you choose to hold on to, scars and all. No wild animal, no secret, no mistake can keep you from the people willing to fight for you. Starting over isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing, every day, to move forward, together. Thank you for following this journey. If your own family has scars, maybe this is the sign you need. Survival is only the beginning. The rest is up to you.